The still one? I've been a wildlife tracker for the U.S. Forest Service for 12 years. Mostly in the Cascade Range, where the trees grow so close together, sunlight only touches the ground in slivers. Where the silence isn't empty, it's listening. My job is simple. Hike remote sectors, document animal signs, report anything unusual. I don't believe in monsters, but I believe in footprints that don't match any known species. In howls that echo in three-part harmony, like something's practicing human speech. In the way deer freeze and stare at nothing, like they see something we can't. Last October, I was assigned Sector Red 9-5, 0 square mile patch of old growth near Mount St. Helens. No trails, no cell service, just me, my tent, and a satellite phone that barely worked. Routine was quiet. Check trail cams, patrol ridge lines, log findings by headlamp. Nothing strange. Until day 4. That morning, I found a trail cam knocked over. Not damaged, just laid flat, lens pointed at the sky. I reset it, continued my round. At dusk, I reviewed the footage. The camera had recorded from midnight to 3:17 a.m. Then static. Not snow, not interference, clean black. Like someone covered the lens with their hand. I checked the other 6 cams. All showed the same gap. 3:17 to 3:22 a.m. 5 minutes. 5 seconds. Exact. Every time. I called dispatch on the sat phone. Voice crackling. Any maintenance drones in Sector Red 9 last night? No, came the reply. You're the only human within 30 miles. I went to bed uneasy. At 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of breathing. Not mine. Slow. Wet. Like lungs full of river mud coming from just outside my tent. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The sound stopped. Then a single branch snapped. Not stepped on. Broken. Deliberately. Like someone was showing me they could do it. I unzipped the tent at dawn. No tracks in the frost. Just a circle of flattened ferns arranged in a perfect ring around my sleeping bag. And in the center, a single human hair. Brown. My shade, but twice as long as mine. That night, I left my recorder running outside the tent, set to voice activation. At 3:17 a.m., it triggered. Not a growl, not a scream, a whisper in my voice. You're not alone. I didn't pack up, didn't call for extraction, because I knew then it wasn't trying to scare me away. It was trying to keep me. By learning how to sound like me, when I'm gone, I stopped sleeping in the tent after that. Dragged my sleeping bag into the hollow of a lightning-struck cedar roots curled overhead like a rib cage, bark still warm from last summer's fire. It smelled of resin and damp rot, but it felt safer, like the tree was holding its breath around me. The next morning, I found my camp stove sitting in the center of the clearing. Not where I'd left it tucked beside my pack under the tarp. It was clean, polished. The fuel valve turned to off, even though I always leave it open to bleed pressure. And beside it, a second coffee cup. Chipped ceramic, my kind. The one I bought at that gas station in Packwood. But this one had a hairline crack. I didn't remember. I picked it up. Cold, dry, no fingerprints. Just the faint smell of wood smoke and something underneath like wet dog and crushed pine needles. I didn't touch my own cup that day. Drank water straight from the bottle. By afternoon, I hiked to the ridge to check the northern cameras. Found 3 of them facing the wrong way. Not knocked over, not broken. Gently turned. All pointed back toward my campsite, like someone had stood there, studied the lens for a long time, then adjusted it carefully so it could watch me sleep. I pulled the memory cards. Every file from the night before showed the same thing. Me, curled in my sleeping bag. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the image blurred. Not from motion, from something passing in front of the lens. Close. So close the camera couldn't focus. A shape. Tall. Hunched. Shoulders too wide for a man. And behind it, another shape. Smaller. Standing perfectly still. Watching the first one watch me. I sat on that ridge until sunset, hands shaking, staring at the screen. That's when I noticed the smell on my jacket. Not sweat, not campfire, that same wet dog stench. Like something had leaned over me while I slept and breathed on my clothes. I burned the jacket that night. Built a fire so hot the stones cracked. Watched the flames, eat the fabric, hoping it would take the smell with it. But when I climbed into my sleeping bag, I still caught it faint, clinging to my hair. And beneath it, coffee. Black. No sugar. Just how I make it. Except I hadn't made any, not since I saw that second cup. At midnight, I heard it again. Not breathing this time. Whispering from the far side of the creek. My voice. But slower. Like it was learning the shape of each word. You always leave the stove open. Rustling leaves. But I fixed it for you. I didn't answer. Didn't move. Because I knew if I spoke, it would hear the fear in my throat. And it would know I wasn't ready yet. Ready to stay. Ready to become quiet like it is. Ready to watch from the trees. Instead of being watched. This morning, I found my spare boots lined up neatly by the cedar hollow. Laces tied in double knots, the way I never tie them. And inside the left one, a single sprig of hemlock. Fresh. Damp. Placed like an offering. Or a promise. It's not hunting me. It's courting me. Teaching me how to be still, how to listen, how to disappear into the woods so it can finally step out, wearing my name, my voice, my silence. I stopped trying to leave after that. Not because I was afraid, but because the trail kept changing. The same ridge path I'd walked 100 times now ended in thickets. I didn't recognize thorny vines coiled like sleeping snakes, trees bent inward as if shielding something behind them. My compass spun lazy circles, useless. Even the stars seemed shifted, wrong. The forest wasn't hiding me. It was holding me. For him. 3 nights ago, I followed the creek downstream past the bend where the water runs black over basalt and found the stones. Not natural. Not placed by hikers. 7 standing slabs of granite, each taller than a man, arranged in a loose ring, moss-covered, ancient. The kind of place old maps mark with a skull or the words, "Do not enter." In the center, a fire pit. Cold. But the ashes smelled fresh, like pine and wet fir and something sweet underneath, like burnt honey. And around the rim, boots, prints, dozens of them. All different sizes. All facing inward. Some looked decades old, leather cracked, soles worn smooth. Others were new. One even had a red hiking boot tread I recognized from a missing poster I'd seen at the ranger station last spring. But the freshest set? Mine. Size 10. Scuffed toe. Mud. From the north slope. Leading right to the edge of the circle. Then stopping as if I'd stood there watching, listening, learning. I backed away slowly, didn't touch anything. But when I reached my camp at dawn, I found a stone on my sleeping bag. Smooth, river worn. Warm to the touch, carved with a single symbol, an eye inside a hand. I've seen it before in cave paintings near the Columbia River. Indigenous elders call it the Watcher's Mark. Not a warning, an invitation. That night, I heard them. Not one voice. Many. Whispering from the ridge above camp. Not in English. Not in any language I know. But between the guttural clicks and low hums, fragments of human speech, a laugh, a cough. The phrase, "pass the water," all spoken in voices I almost recognized. A woman's lilt, an old man's rasp, my own tired sigh. They weren't mimicking us. They were remembering us. Practicing the sounds of the ones they'd watched until they could wear them like skin. At 3:17 a.m., the whisper came again, closer now, just beyond the cedar roots. "You're almost ready." My voice, but softer, sad. You don't flinch at the dark anymore. You don't call out when you hear footsteps. You leave your cup out, hoping I'll use it. I didn't deny it, because it was true. Somewhere along the way, the fear had turned into something else. Curiosity. Longing. The terrible, quiet understanding that maybe I belong here more than I ever did down in the towns, where people talk too loud and never listen to the wind. "Come to the stones tonight," it whispered. "Stand in your place. Let us teach you how to be still." I didn't answer, but I didn't say no. And in the silence that followed, I think it knew. This morning I packed nothing. Left my pack, my water filter, my satellite phone, just took my knife and the carved stone. and I walked back to the circle, not as prey, not as a tracker, but as someone who finally understands the woods don't want to eat you. They want you to join them, to stand watch with the still ones, to learn the language of snapped branches and cold breath, to become part of the silence so someone else can feel watched and wonder if they're truly alone. I stood in the center of the stone circle as the sun bled out behind the western ridge. No wind, no birds. Even the creek had gone quiet, like it was holding its breath. The air smelled of damp earth and pine resin, and beneath it, that familiar musk, wet fur, old smoke, the faint sweetness of decay. I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear needs distance. And I'd run out of space between us long ago. At dusk, they came, not crashing through the brush, not roaring from the dark. They simply appeared between the trees, behind the stones, in the spaces where shadow pooled thickest. Tall, broad-shouldered, covered in coarse, dark hair that caught the last red light like wet bark. Their eyes, deep set, reflective, glowed faintly, not with menace, but with something older, patience, recognition. One stepped forward, not the largest, not the loudest, the one who'd been watching me longest. It stopped 10 feet away, head tilted the way I tilt mine when I'm listening to distant thunder. Then it raised a hand. Not a claw, a hand. 5 fingers, calloused, dirt under the nails, and in its palm, a coffee cup. My chipped ceramic cup, clean, dry. It held it out like an offering, like a test. I didn't move. It stepped closer, placed the cup gently on the ground between us. Then it did something I'll never forget. It sat, cross-legged, like a person, like me, and waited, not demanding, not threatening, just present. I looked at the cup, at the ring of silent watchers, at the stones worn smooth by centuries of feet that weren't human, and I understood this wasn't about replacing me. It was about continuity. The forest needs eyes, ears, a presence that walks the ridges and knows the language of silence. For generations, it's been us, trackers, rangers, wanderers who filled that role. But we always leave. They don't. So they learn us, not to steal our lives, but to carry them forward when we're gone. I knelt, picked up the cup. It was warm. Inside black coffee. No sugar. Exactly how I make it. I drank it. Bitter. Real. As I set the cup down, the still one reached into the folds of its matted fur and pulled out something small. A ranger badge. Rusted. Dated 1983. From a man named Elias Crow, reported missing near these very ridges 40 years ago. It placed the badge in my hand, then pointed to my chest. Not my heart. My voice. It wanted me to speak. Not to beg. Not to scream. To say my name. So it could remember it. So it could carry it into the next winter. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Not because I was scared, because my throat had gone dry. And when I touched it, my skin felt rough, thick, like bark after rain. I looked down at my hands. In the fading light, they looked wrong. Longer fingers, darker nails, hair sprouting along the knuckles. I hadn't changed overnight. I'd been changing since day one. Every time I chose silence over noise, every time I listened instead of speaking, every time I left my cup out, hoping, the still one stood, gently took the empty cup from my hand. Then it turned and walked back into the trees. The others followed, no sound, no rustle, just shadows folding into deeper shadow. I stayed in the circle, alone, but not lonely. For the first time in years, I felt seen, understood, known. At midnight, I heard a voice from the ridge above. Young, nervous, male. Hello? Is anyone out here? A new tracker. Lost. Scared. Calling into the dark like I once did. I didn't answer, didn't move. Just watched from the edge of the trees as he stumbled into the clearing, flashlight beam trembling over the stone circle. He saw the cup, the old badge, my abandoned pack. He called out again, voice cracking. Marcus? Marcus Boone? Are you? I stepped forward just enough for the moonlight to catch my silhouette. Tall, broad, still. He froze. His breath hitched. And in that moment, I saw it in his eyes. Not terror. Recognition. The same dawning understanding I'd felt weeks ago. That he wasn't alone. That someone had been watching. Learning. Waiting. I turned and walked back into the woods. Let him follow if he wanted. Or run. It didn't matter. The forest would decide. And I had a new cup to fill. Black. No sugar. For the next one who stops fearing the silence and starts listening to it. If you ever hike alone in the Cascades and you find a clean coffee cup by a cold fire pit, don't pick it up. Just whisper your name into the trees. If the wind carries it away, you're still yours. But if the silence answers in your own voice, run or stay. Either way, you've already been chosen. Grid log. Outpost 47. My name is Marcus Boone. I was a field technician for Pacific Northwest Power and Grid, assigned to Outpost 47, a remote substation deep in the Olympic Peninsula rainforest. This isn't a ghost story. It's my final maintenance log, recovered from the station hard drive on the 18th of October, 2025. Outpost 47 services 300 square miles of wilderness. No towns, no roads, just old growth cedar, constant rain, and 230,000 volts humming through steel transformers day and night. My rotation? 21 days on, 7 off. Solo. Routine was simple. 6 a.m. Check voltage stability. 10 a.m. patrol perimeter fence. Bear damage common. 2 p.m. Log wildlife interference. Raccoons love chewing insulation. 10 p.m. radio check with sector control. Nothing unusual. Until day 12, that morning I found the main breaker tripped. Not overloaded, not faulty, manually switched off. I reset it. Continued my round. At noon, I checked the security feed. All 8 cameras showed static between 3:14 and 3:19 a.m. Not snow, not interference, clean black. Like someone paused the recording. I pulled the raw logs. Every camera cut at exactly 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 7 seconds a.m. restored at 3 hours, 19 minutes, and 3 seconds a.m. 5 minutes, 56 seconds of nothing. I called sector control. Any scheduled maintenance last night? No, came the reply. You're the only soul within 40 miles, Boone. I went outside to inspect the fence. Found fresh boot prints in the mud near the east transformer. Size 11, my size, but the tread pattern wrong. My boots have deep lug soles, Carhartt work boots scuffed at the toe. These were smooth, like dress shoes, and they led from the tree line straight to the breaker box. Then stopped. No return path. Just 6 prints. Dry. Even though it had rained all night. Back inside, I checked my own boots by the door. Still damp. Still muddy. But when I looked closer, a single leaf was stuck in the left heel. Not cedar. Not fern. A maple leaf. Outpost 47 is 80 miles from the nearest maple tree. That night at 10 p.m., I did my radio check. Sector control answered. Standard call sign. Then, just before signing off, the dispatcher said, Boone, you might want to check your reflection. I froze. I hadn't mentioned anything about prints, about leaves, about static. I walked to the bathroom mirror. My face stared back, tired, stubble, rainforest pallor, normal. But behind me in the mirror's edge, the light above the breaker panel was on. I turned. It was off. I looked back at the mirror. Now it was off there too. But for 3 seconds, it had been on and I hadn't flipped the switch. I didn't sleep that night because I knew whoever walked in my boots was already inside the station and they were learning how to turn on the lights. I spent the night in the control room, back against the breaker panel, wrench in hand. Not a weapon, just something solid to hold on to while the rain drummed on the roof like impatient fingers. At 3:14 a.m., the lights flickered. Not a brownout, not a surge. A single deliberate pulse like someone flipped the master switch and flipped it back. I checked the log. No power fluctuation. Voltage steady. But the security feed? Static again. Exactly 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 7 seconds a.m. I grabbed my flashlight and walked the perimeter. Rain soaked through my jacket in seconds. Mud sucked at my boots. Near the east transformer, I found it. My tool belt. laid neatly on the wet ground, wrenches aligned, tape measure coiled, but the buckle was fastened wrong on the third notch instead of the second. I always used the second. I never told anyone that. Back inside, I checked my locker. My spare tool belt was gone. In its place, a folded piece of paper. My handwriting. He's getting better. Yesterday he left the coffee pot on. Today he reset the breaker before I woke up. Soon he won't need me at all. I don't drink coffee. Never have. At dawn, I reviewed the radio logs. Every transmission I'd made since day one was there. Clear, professional, except one. Time-stamped 3:17 a.m. last night. Channel, emergency band. Voice, mine. This is Boone. Outpost 47 secure. No issues. Repeat, no issues. I never sent that. And I never say repeat on routine checks. That's military lingo. I'm a lineman, not a soldier. I called sector control. Did you receive a call from me at 3:17 a.m.? Static. Then affirmative. Sounded fine. Why? I didn't answer because I knew whoever was mimicking me was already filing reports in my name, keeping the station secure so no one would come looking. That afternoon, I set a trap. Left my voice recorder running near the breaker panel. Set it to activate on sound. Went to the far end of the compound, pretending to check fuses. At 3:14 p.m., it triggered. I ran back. The recorder played back 3 words spoken in my voice. Calm and clear. All systems normal. But I hadn't been near the panel. And the recorder's timestamp showed it activated at 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 7 seconds p.m. Exactly 12 hours after the static window. Like clockwork. Like a shift change. I pulled the hard drive, scanned for remote access, nothing. Then I checked the backup generator log. It had cycled on at 3:19 a.m. for exactly 5 minutes, 56 seconds. Long enough to power the cameras during the blackout. But why? Unless it wasn't hiding itself. It was recording itself, practicing. Learning how to move in front of the cameras without triggering motion alerts. Learning how to sound like me over the radio. Learning how to be Marcus Boone well enough that when I finally vanish, no one will notice the difference. Tonight, I'm not sleeping. I've wired the main breaker to a dead man switch. If my heart stops, or if I stop sounding like myself, the whole station goes dark. Emergency beacon activates. They'll send a team, but I know the truth. By the time they arrive, he'll be the one answering the door, wearing my boots, using my voice, and telling them calm and clear, all systems normal. Check your own voice sometimes. When you're alone, say your name out loud. If it sounds too smooth, too practiced, run before it learns how to say it better than you do. The emergency beacon triggered at 3:14 a.m. Not because I died, because I stopped talking. I'd been silent for 12 hours, no radio checks, no log entries, no voice on the intercom. Protocol says if a technician goes dark for more than 8 hours in a high-risk zone, dispatch sends a rapid response. At dawn, the chopper came. 2 men, utility uniforms, no insignia, just black jackets with PNW grid stitched in silver thread. They landed in the muddy clearing, boots sinking as they approached the chain link fence. I watched from the control room window, heart pounding. One of them raised a hand toward the gate. It was already open. I never unlocked it. They stepped inside, scanned the compound, moved like they knew the layout. Because they did, I'd filed schematics with sector control last month. Standard procedure. But these men didn't check the breaker panels first. They went straight to the comm shed. Like they were looking for something specific. I grabbed the radio. This is Boone. Identify yourselves. The taller one turned. Looked up at the window. Riley and Cho. Sector response. You okay, Marcus? His face was right. His voice familiar, like someone I'd trained with years ago. But his eyes, too still. Too dry in this rain. I called down, what's the failsafe code for Outpost 47? He didn't hesitate. Delta 79er. Correct. But I never told anyone that code. It's written only in my private logbook, the one that's been missing since day 10. He took a step closer. We got your beacon. Said you'd gone silent. We're here to extract. I didn't move. Then tell me, how do I take my coffee? He smiled. Friendly. Reassuring. Black. 2 sugars. Always in that dented thermos. I don't drink coffee. And my thermos isn't dented. I raised the emergency flare gun I keep by the door. Stay back. His smile didn't fade. Just shifted like a photo slightly out of focus. You're not him, he said softly. We know that now. The real Marcus Boone filed a clean log last night. Said everything was fine. Then you tripped the beacon. Why? My blood ran cold. Because if he thinks I'm the imposter, then the thing wearing my voice has already won. Behind Riley, Cho opened the comm shed, pulled out a radio, spoke into it my voice, clear and calm. This is Boone. False alarm. Technician experienced acute stress reaction. Recommend immediate extraction for psych eval. I lunged for the main switch. Too late. The lights died. Not a blackout, a shutdown. All systems powered down except the emergency battery. Red glow filled the room. From outside, Riley's voice, now flat, official. Subject is non-compliant. Proceeding with containment. I backed into the breaker room, locked the door. From the other side, a knock. Not loud, polite, just like mine. Then my own voice whispered through the steel. Let me in, Marcus. I can make it stop. I can make them believe you're real again. I pressed my back to the wall. Because I finally understood it wasn't trying to replace me. It was trying to save me by becoming me so completely that the real Marcus Boone could disappear and no one would mourn him. No one would even notice. Outside, boots crunched on gravel, keys rattled in the lock. Not my keys, but they fit because he'd been practicing, learning which key turns the deadbolt, which one opens the tool shed, which one unlocks the part of me that's tired and just wants to stop fighting. I never gave them my keys, which means he's had them longer than I thought, and he's been waiting for me to give up so he can finally go home to a warm bunk, a hot meal, in a life where no one asks why he doesn't drink coffee. I didn't open the door, didn't speak, just stood in the red emergency glow, listening to the rain and the hum of dying capacitors. The lock clicked open. Riley stepped in, no weapon drawn, hands loose at his sides. Behind him, Cho held a radio, earpiece in. "Marcus," Riley said gently, "it's over. You're coming home." I looked past him to the comms shed window. There he was, wearing my jacket, my boots, my face, standing calmly beside the radio, watching me through the glass, not smug, not cruel, just tired. Like he'd been doing this longer than I had. "You don't understand," I said. "He's not me, he's learning me." Riley sighed. "We've heard that before. Every time. Right before they stopped sounding like themselves." He took a step forward, and that's when I saw the faint red cord tied around his wrist, hidden under his sleeve. Same as Velez wore in Black Pine. Navajo protection knot. He met my eyes, held them. Then, almost imperceptibly, he shook his head. "Don't fight." Because fighting meant proving I wasn't the real Marcus Boone. And the real one doesn't panic. The real one files clean logs, drinks coffee, lets the grid run smooth. Cho stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. As he reached for me, I whispered, "Why the red cord?" Riley didn't look at his wrist, just said, "Low and fast." Some things wear skin better than others. We don't kill them, we contain them by letting them believe they won. They cuffed me, led me out into the rain. The chopper waited, rotors slicing through the mist. As they loaded me into the rear cabin, I looked back at the station. The thing wearing my face stood in the doorway, not waving, not smiling, just watching, like a man seeing off an old friend. The flight to Olympia took 45 minutes. At Sector HQ, they debriefed me for 6 hours. Psych eval, voice stress analysis, retina scan. I told them everything. The static windows, the dry footprints, the coffee lie. They listened, nodded, took notes. Then the lead investigator said, "Boone, you've been alone too long. The isolation, the constant hum, it rewires your brain." I didn't argue, just asked for my personal effects. They handed me a box. Inside, my wallet, my watch, my dented thermos, and a folded note written in my handwriting. "He's still there, and he's keeping the lights on. Don't come back." I burned the note in the parking lot. Took a bus to Seattle. Reported for duty at Outpost 12 last week. New station, new routine. But every morning at 6 a.m., I check the breaker log. Every night at 10 p.m., I do my radio check short, clear, no extras. And I never mention coffee. Because I know now, Outpost 47 didn't create the Mimic. It just gave it a uniform to wear, a voice to practice with, and a reason to stay. Somewhere in the Olympic rainforest, the lights are still on, voltage stable, no issues reported. And if you call sector control and ask about Marcus Boone, they'll tell you he's fine, doing his job, keeping the grid alive. If you ever visit a remote substation and the technician offers you coffee, check his thermos. If it's dented, walk away. Because the real ones, they don't need caffeine to stay awake. They're already haunted by what they left behind.